Hi folks, Kieran here again. Hope you're all good. Now, today I'd like to talk about three topics which aren't usually talked about in the same video, but they seem to have a lot in common for me, so I'm going to go ahead and sort of put them all together. The three issues are the legalization of sex work, the legalization of banned drugs such as heroin and cannabis, and the issue of state-assisted suicide. Okay, now in my other videos I've talked about utilitarianism a lot, and for the purposes of this video, let's just keep our aim as a harmonious society. I believe a harmonious society will tend to lead to one with greater happiness. So I won't be talking directly about the survival of humanity and stuff, because it gets a bit confusing for me. So okay, so I'm aiming at a harmonious society here with these in these issues, and I believe that the legalization of all three of these all these three areas will make for a more harmonious society. I think with all of them, the banning of these things is making life more just creating conflict pointlessly, in my opinion. Before I talk individually about the three issues, let me try and talk about common issues. Okay, because I think there are quite a few different things that I find common between these three subjects. First of all, yeah, as I said, I want them all to be legalized, and they're all currently sort of against the law, or I'm not quite sure the position with suicide, but it's kind of not. The state certainly doesn't help you do it. Far from it. And oh yeah, I mean people who assist with it do get prosecuted, don't they? So yeah, it's illegal in that sense to help someone else to do it. And yeah, I see them all as things that we should legalize. Probably the main reason that for that, I think, lies in the fact that there's no or in all cases it's not really a crime with a victim, or at least the victim is always a consenting victim if he or she is a victim. I don't think victim would be the right word. So they're all activities which well, they're all dangerous, and they all will lead to bad things happening once in a while. They're all a little bit bad, or at least there's always a risk, which means that if lots of people do these things, there's gonna be cases where they should, in hindsight, people think they shouldn't have done it, or they get harmed. But it's always, in these cases, it will always be consenting people who consented at the time. I mean, people will end up being innocent victims, particularly the suicide. I mean, obviously, family members of people who've committed suicide are going to suffer, and they didn't consent to it. And again, to a lesser degree. Well, actually, there's some serious issues with other people being affected with the other two as well. But the sort of main person affected is consenting. So I think that's probably the main reason. I think that in lots of cases it's probably the right thing to happen, that the person goes ahead with the person if they have consented. That usually is a sign to me that the drug taking or the sex or the suicide should take place, because I think that they're probably the best person to judge it. So yeah, and also people are always often very negative about these things, like sex. Person paying for sex. There's very little in the press to praise this, or drug taking. I think it was Bill Hicks, the comedian, said something like you don't get something in the paper about someone taking LSD and having a great time. Um, and again, with suicide, our culture is very frowning upon suicide. You don't tend to get people sort of saying that it was for the best with suicide. When I'm talking about legalizing state-assisted suicide here, I'm obviously talking about the non-prosecute. Well, I'm talking about the state actually handling the suicides. I'm talking about people who are terminally ill or in a lot of pain. But also, I would personally extend it to the long-term depressed. But I'll talk about each one in turn in a moment. Other common issues with them, a major common issue, which might be enough to make me want them to legalise them on its own, is the fact that in all of these issues, the banning doesn't seem to have come off. They just seem to be unbannable things, or the things where maybe I don't quite understand how it comes about, but the banning of them doesn't seem to be sort of biting in society. Either the police don't take it seriously, or maybe at all levels it's just not taken seriously, because deep down a hell of a lot of people feel that these are victimless crimes. So you get a bit of a messy situation where people are going to jail, but it doesn't seem to be, certainly isn't eradicating the behaviour, the activities. I'm not coming from a massive research. I haven't researched this topic massively, so actually I should say, I mean, if anybody has been affected by these issues and is got strong opinions against what I'm saying, I mean, I apologise that I'm coming out and talking totally ignorantly about these things. I don't have much experience about these things. I've done a few hours research, like on Wikipedia and stuff. I think in a democracy, in a healthy democracy, everyone has a right to say what they think about topics. And I'm here to be corrected and to learn from people who know more than me. And I apologise if this is it seems a bit callous or whatever, or silly, this video. So yeah, I mean, my research, a little bit of research I did a year or two ago, found that I think they legalized in America, in some states, I think cannabis was legalized in the 70s and some were not, and the study seemed to suggest that either comparing states where it was banned or not, or better to do a longitudinal study of one state. I don't know if they did that, but anyway, it seemed from the study that I looked at that the banning of cannabis wasn't affecting the amount of use, which is, I find, extremely surprising. But seems like people just took it anyway, the same amount. And a very similar thing seemed to happen with street prostitutes in New Zealand. Again, this is on Wikipedia somewhere. And they legalized it, I think, out there relatively recently, maybe 10 years ago or something. And there was a study done which found that the number of street prostitutes didn't change. Obviously that goes against common sense, but maybe I kind of bow to the studies, really, because I don't know if studies saying anything else. I mean, it could be the really, really harsh punishments beyond what we typically do. These things would lead to a reduction in the amount of the activity, but again, that wouldn't be good for a homeowner society for me, because we'd be like executing people to try and stop something which seems to be a victimless crime. Sorry, to go back to what I said about the Bill Hicks thing. I mean, I really do see these things as positive activities. For the most part, I mean, they are either enjoyable at the time, or in the case of suicide, preventing greater amount of pain. So I do see that there's a lot of positive that isn't normally talked about. It's like for the most part, I mean, these are activities people are repeating, not obviously in the case of suicide. So people are relatively knowledgeable of what they're doing. Okay, another thing I still haven't talked about each individually much, is I believe all of these things should be handled by the state in a by a non-profit organisation. I believe in my own economic and political system called strict equality, which would lead to every activity being sort of not-for-profit and not state, really. So be like cooperatives doing everything in my system. So so it's a no-brainer that these things shouldn't be like for profit in a capitalist kind of way. I don't want to have adverts for like suicide clinics on TV, and I really don't want this to be any kind of profit-making thing. But as I say, I think these are positive services on the whole to society. So I think that people should be rewarded for doing it. The sex workers should be rewarded. It's the drug makers and distributors should be rewarded, and the suiciders, the euthanasists, or whatever they should be called, are doing a positive thing. So it's as good as well, it's debatable whether it's as good as certain other things, but it's as good as making toys for kids, or making I don't know, making a nice kitchen for people. I mean, it's something that should be worthy of being rewarded, I believe. Okay, so I've kind of gone through the common issues. Oh, sorry, did I say? But I think there should be compulsory counselling involved in all of them. So I'm not talking about just making them totally legal, like if you assist someone with suicide, you're fine, you don't go to jail or whatever. Or if you provide drugs, that's fine. I mean, I'm talking about a pretty regulated thing where the law says, roughly speaking, that if somebody wants to do any of these activities, due to the fact that they are dangerous and also emotionally dangerous, even when they're not physically dangerous, it should be a requirement of the taker to attend counselling, and they won't be given it sort of straight away. You can't just turn up in a heroin place and ask for heroin. You get your heroin. I'm really talking about you have to do a session or two where you're informed about it, and you basically the counsellor kind of says, do you really need to do this? Why are you doing it? And all that. But ultimately, it'll be, if you do the counselling, if you comply with the counselling, you can get it. It should be up to the user then. Counsellor can't sort of stop it unless, well, I guess if they find out the person is insane or something. But broadly speaking, the counsellor doesn't have the power to stop you, but only by saying this person didn't turn up for the counselling, or when they were in the counselling they refused to speak, or they clearly weren't listening, or had their headphones on the whole time, or whatever. So okay, so individual issues. With the sex thing, I mean the two real pitfalls of it are people taking sort of bad drugs, bad allergic reactions, and so on, and basically health problems, and long-term health problems. I would legalise all of them, all the famous ones, like crack. Crack's what I've heard is the worst drug. That's common. Yeah, heroin, crack, cocaine, all of them. I mean, I'm coming from trying to make a harmonious society here, not from sort of some kind of libertarian ethic. So I don't believe there's this ultimate right on the part of the individual to do anything to themselves. I think the state, I'm okay with the state deciding if something is really, really dangerous, to ban it. Like, for example, if there was this activity where people were injecting themselves with some deadly virus, and they thought that was beneficial, then I'd be okay with banning that. And again, we have all the problems with banning, but I don't have a problem in principle with banning it to try and reduce the activity, even though it's just the only person who gets harmed is the person themselves and their relatives, the grieving relatives. But in the case of, say, crack, I haven't heard that is that dangerous. It's not like injecting yourself with a deadly poison. As I understand it, I'm sure if it was regulated as well, it would be as safe as it could be, and people will be informed about how safe or unsafe it is. So yeah, that's enough about that. I just started talking about drugs and not sex there. Yeah, that was clever. Okay, I'll carry on about sex now. Yeah, health problems. Obviously, you got with the sex, you can catch a disease or whatever. The other issue with the sex is people's relationships. Like someone's in a relationship and then they pay for sex. It makes it very easy to have an affair. Again, the counselling is the best I can do, is to say we'll have the counselling. It could be cases where I guess a relationship benefits from someone being unfaithful, in the sense that keeps the person from committing suicide or from losing all hope in life or something. Broadly speaking, it's probably going to make things worse. So I would obviously be all totally anonymous, this counselling. If someone is trying to seek, basically have an affair by paying for sex, the state would allow, wouldn't do anything to stop that happening, or try and tell the other person or the partner what's happening. But again, the counsellor would stress the harmfulness of the behaviour. But yeah, what can we do? I mean, people have affairs where they don't pay for sex and they're not paying for it, and that's perfectly legal, and I think that's probably right as well. Maybe those people should be forced to have counselling as well. I don't know, but it's hard to work out who they are. But with this, we can at least insist on counselling. With the drugs, I think I started totally talking about that one. I was going to talk about the sex first. With the drugs, it would be non-for-profit. I think you should have places where smoking ban. There shouldn't be an absolute smoking ban. We should have sort of smoking places, like a smoking pub. I'd insist on counselling for the smoking, tobacco as well, and alcohol. So practically everybody be involved in this counselling. If it's not too prohibitively expensive. But there you go to a place anyway, go to a sort of clinic and you get your shot of heroin, and I guess you would pay for it, yeah, but there'd be no adverts on TV and there wouldn't be any fancy packaging, wouldn't be any need of health warnings on the packets, because I think everybody would know. You'd have to go through counselling, but it'd be more like white sort of packets, like you get pills, like proper, paracetamol and that kind of thing. And the suicide thing. I would extend it to people who are not actually ill. The rule I thought of is basically not actually physically ill, but just don't want to live. The rule I would think of it is that you've got to insist on wanting to die for 1/6 of your expected rest of your life. So say you're like 70, you've got 10 years on average left to live. You've got to, if you insist on wanting to die for 2.5 years or whatever, just less than 2 years. Sorry. If you insist on wanting to die for that period of time, then the state will allow you to do it, but you have to have a lot of counselling and so on. But if you're 20, you know, and you're healthy, you got like 60 years left to live or something. Then you've got to keep on going to the counsellor and keep on saying I want to die. And then if you've done about 10 years of that, then fair enough, you probably do want to die. And the council will try and encourage the person to get talking to everybody and so on. But if they're that unhappy, then I think it is for the best that they die, and everyone around them who loves them should actually probably accept that. I would actually, even if you're paralyzed or whatever, I'd still do this 6 to the rest of your life rule, because it's people do get very eventually get used to being paralyzed and so on. Again, with people who are terminally ill, the 6th thing seems to work. But the only exception I probably put on it is if someone's in acute pain of some kind, then we could probably fast track them a bit if they really, you know, if every minute is agony. You know. I think I'd forget about the 6th for the rest of your life thing there. Okay, so hopefully that would be a recipe for a more harmonious society, and hope you found this video interesting. All the best to everyone. Bye.